Hello everyone, seems like we're set.
Yep. Hello. Hi.
So welcome to this second live stream. I'm Julian.
I'm Paul. I'm Paul too.
Hello everyone, seems like we're Paul too.
Yeah. Hello. Hi.
So welcome to this second live stream. I'm Julian.
I'm Paul. I'm Paul too.
Hello everyone, talk about those subjects.
Yeah. Hello.
So first of all, welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
I'm Julian. LTS, what does
I'm
it mean?
Paul too.
Hello everyone, talk about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
I'm Julian. LTS, we'll talk about hello everyone, talk about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
I'm Julian. LTS, apparently we have a one explanation about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
Julian, LTS, apparently we have a one explanation about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
Julian, LTS, apparently we have a one explanation about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
Julian, LTS, apparently we have a one explanation about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
Julian, LTS, apparently we have a one explanation about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
Julian, LTS, apparently we have a one explanation about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
Julian, LTS, apparently we have a one explanation about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
Julian, LTS, apparently we have a one explanation about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
Julian, LTS, apparently we have a one explanation about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
Julian, LTS, apparently we have a one explanation about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
Julian, LTS, apparently we have a one explanation about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
Julian, LTS, apparently we have a one explanation about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
Julian, LTS, apparently we have a one explanation about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
Julian, LTS, apparently we have a one explanation about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through
Hello.
some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
Julian, LTS, apparently we have a one explanation about those subjects.
Yeah.
We could go through some of the first of all performance welcome to the second live stream.
Version 2.9
Julian.
Yeah, okay, and that will, I think.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Yeah.
So we should have fixed this audio issue, hopefully. Just waiting for a confirmation. Yeah, it's good.
It's okay.
Nice.
Oh. Awesome.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Right. So I'll start again. So today we'll see the 2.9 LTS. What do we mean by LTS? We'll go through the various perf improvements we did on 2.9 compared to the previous versions. Then Paul will talk to you about some GPU simulation news. Paul, the other Paul, will take you through various material editor improvements, and the other Paul will show you some new volumetric material stuff. Then I'll go through a few improvements in the content browser and the effect editor, and also a new experimental feature we have tried which is using Google Translation API to automatically translate the UI of the editor. So hopefully this will be useful to you. And we'll end by some Q&A. We'll see if you guys have some questions, just post them on the live chat and we'll take a look at that. So first, LTS. So typically the release cycle of PopcornFX has been 2 to 3 months. So every 2 to 3 months we would increase the minor version and go from 2.8 to 2.9, 2.9 to 2.10, followed by roughly a patch every 2 weeks. And once a new version is out, so let's say now we release 2.9, we usually stop doing patches for the previous version, 2.8. So the point here is that the long-term support version will keep getting patches for 2 years. So we commit to fix the bugs that we know about for the next 2 years. So this is kind of a milestone where you can be more confident that you can stick to it and that you will get a very stable version in the long run. So yeah, obviously we don't expect to still have bugs to fix in 2 years. We sure hope that in the next couple of months most of the known bugs in 2.9 will be fixed, but yeah, that's the main idea. So we're not really sure yet how often we will do LTS versions. It will probably be one per year, something like that. We'll see, but yeah, that's the main idea. So now regarding the performance improvements, in 2.9, here are a bunch of boring graphs, but which are pretty, which show some pretty significant improvements. So these are the load and unload times of the effects. So how much time it takes to load some effects from version 2.0 all the way to 2.9. So you can see some significant drops along the way. And in 2.9 we kept slightly improving it, nothing too significant, but yeah, it's going down over time, and we still have some improvements to do in the upcoming versions. This is more for the SDK users than for the artists, but we also did some pretty nice improvements on the number of memory allocations and frees happening during load. So on the right you have the memory allocations, went down slightly in 2.9, and on the right you have the graphs for the number of frees. So on the top it's the linear scale, on the bottom is the logarithmic scale. So the linear scale shows you that we basically dropped from a lot of frees per load to almost none. And the bottom graph is just to better appreciate the little variations near the bottom. So we had a slight increase in 2.8. That's because of some bug fixes that required doing 4 or 5 additional allocations per effect. This is really completely insignificant. So this is quite a nice thing to see, because usually having more frees when you load an effect means that you're freeing allocations that aren't useful afterwards. So we try to minimize these and to keep them as low as possible. So again, yeah, this is going in the right direction. And this one is a pretty, pretty violent one. This shows the difference between 2.8 and 2.9 in the time taken to instantiate effects in game. So on the horizontal axis you have the number of effects instantiated. So at the far right you have 100,000 effects. This isn't really a realistic scenario, but it's still useful to have a rough ballpark idea of the performance impacts. And on the left side you have 100 instantiations of effect, which is a much more realistic in-game scenario. Even 1,000 instantiations, we have seen real in-game uses with that much. And the vertical axis is the time in milliseconds. This is logarithmic. So before 2.9, instantiating 100,000 effects took 10 seconds. And in 2.9, it's now down to 100 milliseconds. So that's 100 times speed up. And on the lower end of the spectrum, it's still a 1.5 times speed up. So it's a pretty nice improvement. We also did some improvements on the rendering side. So this happened, this was an overhead that happened when you had lots of effects preloaded in the scene. So typically what game engines and studios will do would be to preload most of the effects they will need, and depending on in-game events, instantiate them based on what's required. And having all those effects preloaded up front meant that we had a pretty large performance impact just going through all the instantiated effects to check various things and do bookkeeping. So you can see here, this is a capture inside the Unreal profiler. So you can see before that this took 1.4 milliseconds before, and this is with probably around 2,000 preloaded mediums. So we call mediums we have basically one medium per layer, and it's the runtime name of what contains a simulation, a particle simulation. So here we had around probably 2,000 mediums, took 1.4 milliseconds before, now it's down to 0.15 milliseconds, so a 10x improvement. That's also pretty nice. And by the way, in the previous graph, this only happened again when you had a lot of preloaded effects. If you only had 2 or 3 effects, you wouldn't see such a difference. Right, so now we will switch. I will switch the hand to Paul, who will show you the rendering. GPU and rendering things.
First thing, thank you. First thing I'd like to present you is the new GPU ribbon that we now support in the editor. We also have SDK samples that show you how you can integrate GPU ribbon into your render, into your engine. So those particles are GPU simulated and effectively GPU rendered and sorted for alpha blending rendering. The other good news with GPU simulation is that we now support PS5 GPU simulation with a PS5 compute shader and also samples in the SDK to show you how to run that on PS5 console. I'll let you, Paul, present the new material stuff.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the material and shader editor improvement we've done in 2.9. So to show you that, I'm going to open the new materials we created for 2.9, which are experimental materials. So they are not, the goal is to replace the default materials of PopcornFX with those in the long term, but you can expect some pretty heavy changes on those until they replace the default materials. And so first of all, to open the material editor, I'll just mention that you will need to have the developer mode enabled. It's kind of a developer feature.
Because just a quick precision, because usually we found that it's not the artists that touch those materials directly, it's more the SDK integration guys in the studios that tend to put their hands in this, so it's still in developer mode for now.
Yeah, exactly. So first thing you can see is that we now have a viewport in the material editor, and that allows to quickly preview some changes. So let's, for example, enable a feature here, and I can try some shader, some path of code in the shader just by enabling some features in there. You don't have to open an effect next to the material editor to test your shaders. So that's pretty useful to iterate on your material. So you can see you can try different things and etc. And one of the other big improvements we've done is that you can now actually add includes in the shaders. So we were able to factorize a lot of code, and as you can see, it correctly handles the dependencies for the shaders. So you can create your own shaders with its include and do a package and effect that uses it, and it should package the includes correctly with it. So yes, I'm going to show you quickly one example of stuff you can do with the new materials that were pretty painful to do before. So one of the things that was pretty annoying before was mixing diffuse with emissive rendering on the same renderer. So I'll just create a layer with an infinite life. So just a quick example to show how to mix those. So I'm going to choose the experimental material for billboards with the diffuse feature. And you can see in this material I can also enable the emissive feature, and you can now actually specify two different textures. So let's put the particle a bit bigger so you can actually see what's going on. Oops. And so you can actually specify two different textures there. So I'm doing developer art, but it's just to show you how it works. It makes it way easier, so you can output, for example, your fire texture, just the emissive part in Embergen or something, and then just the diffuse part, and use those separately here. And all of this is done in the same draw call, so you won't have any sorting issues between your particles. So yes.
And one thing worth noting, because we already had emissive slots in the previous material, but in the previous material we needed to have the diffuse matching with the emissive. Here you can see that the emissive is rendered even on pixels that have no diffuse, and that's the improvement, because some of you might notice that the emissive slot was already here.
Yeah, basically you can mix all the render features as you want, and it should work correctly whatever you enable.
Yeah.
You can have like an emissive lit diffuse with the tint and distortion, and it should render correctly. Yep. So that's it for the material improvements in 2.9, and I'm gonna let Paul talk about the new materials he also added.
Yeah, I also added some. Paul showed you the material editor. In this version, we provide you 3 sample material done with this material editor to showcase how you can improve editor rendering to match your engine, or in the other way, how you can bring shader we provide into your engine with some custom features a bit more advanced. So those effects can be found in the sample pack with also the shader. Feel free to dive in it and copy it and reuse it. The first one is our parallax remarching materials. So it's actually here a flat billboard, but rendered with some parallax algorithm in order to create like a 3D feel. The 8 is exposed. You can also tweak the shader to expose more parameter, and everything you expose can be then graph driven. So for example, let's tweak oops, not there. Let's tweak the 8 of it, and now we have something much stronger. The idea in this sample effect is also to show how you can drive simulated particles with a texture that match your remarch texture. So this here is a texture generated from the same simulation like the ray marching, which...
double click on it, by the way, to
oh
open
yeah,
the texture
right.
viewer.
You're right. Oops, not the right one. Okay, texture are render as a 8 map, and those in this sample are generated from Embergen. So I have my diffuse one and also my vector field one there. The pack also contains a fully volumetric effect. This is quite similar but more heavy in terms of computation, because this is a 3D ray marching that uses stepping in the texture for primary ray but also for shadow rays. So it's still a billboard, but this one works very nicely. It's just very heavy, so use with caution. And same, every exposed parameter can be graph driven. Let's say I want to rotate this or change the scattering color. The third one I want to show you, and the last one, is the 6-way light map. So you probably know that technique. It uses baked lighting in 6 different directions and interpolates between those baked lightings depending on the light direction. So once again, those are generated using EmberGen with what we believe to be the common standard, but this can be easily tweaked into from the shader editor. Let's change. I'll remove the environment contribution, so now we only have the light coming from the left side. I can bring back the environment that's computed from the cube map, and yeah, it reacts to like the sunlight and directional light. And that's pretty much it.
Nice. This looks cool.
Thanks.
Okay, so now I will show you a whole bunch of small little things we improved in 2.9. So the first one I'm going to show is improvements to the details view of the content browser. So I'll actually dug this below. Whoops. So before 2.9, you already had those columns giving you details about various assets. So for example, in the effects, you could see a number of layers, of templates, of instructions, of total instructions, etc. The version, file size. But now we added more information for other asset types, for example, meshes. So here, if I go in meshes, I can see the triangle count, but so if you have an older installation, you will have to go into the settings. So I did this too quickly. You right click here on the title bar, you go to open settings, and it brings you directly to the correct panel. And here, if I reset, it will repopulate that with all the defaults one. So you will see the new ones that we added. So here we have submeshes, triangles, and you can actually create custom ones and pick from various data sources. So I can also display the number of vertices of bones in meshes, stuff like that. And now you can see that, I also have a texture here, so it tells me the texture size. I can sort by the texture size. Yeah, it's pretty useful when you have lots of assets and you just want to quickly skim through them. Same thing here for textures. It also adds a couple of infos for the vector field. So here you can see the dimensions of the vector fields. This one is animated. I don't know if you're going to see it very clearly on the stream, but it says 16 by 16 by 16 times 20. So that's 20 frames of animation for this vector field. 20 frames down there in the timeline. Also, in the content browser, you now have animated thumbnails. I did a small video on my channel to show this, but yeah, now you can capture animated thumbnails, and when you hover them in the content browser, you will see the thumbnail animating. So, for example, if I open that one, I just like the look of it. So, and I zoom in. So you have this button here, which has always been there, which allows you to capture the static thumbnail, and next to it, this little video camera allows you to capture the animated thumbnail. So here you can see that if I unselect it and click this, it will give me a new static thumbnail. And then if I click the camera next to it, it will say here that it's currently capturing the thumbnails, and I now have my new animated thumbnail.
How long is the animation exactly? 1 second? Or?
No, so good question. The animation is 4 seconds at 12 frames per second. So this gives us 48 frames, 48 captured frames. And actually, if you go into the editor thumbnails folder, you will see next to each regular thumbnail, you will see a long stripy image, which when you open it contains actually all the frames of the animation. Right, so next small thing is gonna be the PKPR viewer. So if you are an SDK user, or even if you use the Unity plugin, or I'm not sure it's wired in Unreal, but you can capture a performance report of various frames just to inspect where the performance goes. Usually when you contact us and when we help you troubleshooting performance concerns with lots of effects, we ask you to send us one of these captures. Well, you can now very easily open them yourself with the editor just by double-clicking them since 2.9. Before you had to use a separate application that you had to download. And yeah, so now just double-click on it and it will use the editor to open it. And you can zoom into there and see the details of each call. So these are frames. I won't go into detail now on what these things actually are, but it's basically the performance capture. So next thing, what do I have? Oh yeah, the memory view. So I'll open the globe effect probably. Yep, I'll show it with this one. So before 2.9, we had various view modes. So the one that shows you the exact rate, the performance view, which colors each layer based on how much time it costs during the simulation. So the red ones cost the most in the frame, and the green ones are basically no problem there. So this was pretty useful to spot the most performance-hungry layers and help you optimize them. Well, now you also have the same thing for memory, and it shows you which layers consume the most memory. And some of them do not necessarily match the performance. So it's still useful to have that. When you zoom in, you see the actual number of megabytes or kilobytes used for the current simulation by this layer. So if you have in-game memory issues with lots of effects that eat lots of memories, you can use that to help you optimize the effect. Also, in that panel there, we added this overview of the memory consumption, and here it tells me that the memory values are usually larger when the effect is built in editor mode. This is because the editor adds more per particle data to just enable editor features such as debugging, so it will report higher memory usage than what you already have in game. So if you want more precise values, you go in there in the viewport toolbar and you switch to shipping, and now you will see more accurate memory values. So here we went from 22 megabytes to 16 megabytes for this effect. I also should mention that when you go inside a layer, this memory view mode doesn't yet give you any indication per node of where the memory is consumed. It's only per layer that you can see that. In the future, we have a few ideas on how to implement that inside each layer, but it's not a real high priority right now. The main information, you already have the main information, the most useful one by looking at the layers. The easy thing to reduce the memory is just to reduce the particle count, I guess, or to make the layer less complex, and you can see how it impacts the memory usage. But we still have things to improve on that front in the future. And the last thing I wanted to show was regarding curves. So I will take this effect, and we did a few improvements in the curve editor. So I will expose the size of those particles and sample a curve to drive the size. This is a bit too big, but whatever. So before 2.9 you had two curve modes. You had either linear or spline, and now we added a third one, which is step. So this allows you to very quickly create a stepped curve. It's a pretty basic feature, but that was asked since version 1 of Popcorn, and we never got to implement it. Well, now it's done. You could do that before by setting the curve to linear and creating 2 control points per step, but it was pretty painful to edit. Now it's really straightforward. And one other thing regarding curves is a new optimization in the graph compiler with curves in 2.9. So if I switch this to, let's say linear for now. So before 2.9 we already had a simple optimization with the linear curves, where it was able to entirely remove the sampling of the curve and replace it by a very simple math computation directly in the simulation, which was a lot less costly, but way cheaper. And now we extended that to more complex curves. So for example, that one. So this is going to be a bit scary. I'm going to show the instructions of the graph just to show you what computations it's actually doing. So I'm going to switch to the compiler tab and go down here, and when I select the node that samples the curve here, I see that it highlights these few instructions. So this one just loads the particle life ratio to index the curve. It's the curve cursor. Here it does a bunch of other loading things, whatever. And here it calls the sampling of the curve, and we can see here that it takes around 60 cycles. So it doesn't really matter what a cycle is, just remember the value, 60 cycles. It's basically a measure of the cost of the thing. So now when I switch to shipping, which is how your effect will be compiled when brought in game, it will always be compiled in shipping, same as the memory, as I was saying before. The editor, the editor mode disables some optimizations for the editor to function correctly. And when I switch to shipping and go back to take a look at this curve, so now I don't have the sample function anymore, I just have a multiplication, because this curve is actually x squared function. So the graph optimizer was able to see that and just replaced the costly 60 cycle sample by a 1.3 cycle multiplication to compute the square. So this is way cheaper, obviously. So you might think, yeah, I'm never going to use a curve that does a square, a perfect square. Well, if you change the curve to something else like this and go back into the graph, so here we will see that it didn't change at all. That's because I'm in shipping mode, and one of the things the editor doesn't do in shipping mode is it doesn't recompile the graph when I change curves. So I'll need to hit the recompile button, and now I can see that instead of this single multiply, I have this series of multiplications and additions that compute this actual curve I just edited for 3.4 cycles instead of 60. So yeah, it supports a whole bunch of different curve shapes. It uses a polynomial approximation, and in 2.10 we added even more curve types. So yeah, you can bet that most of your curves should be, as long as they're not too complex or too wiggly or too weird, they should be optimizable by the graph compiler, which brings nice performance improvements. So yep, that was all for me, I think. Yeah, if I can forget anything.
You had the gizmo attribute to
Oh,
showcase
right.
also.
I completely missed that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
And here I was thinking I was done. So the gizmo. Yep, so when you're using attributes, here I have a float3 attribute that represents the target of that flamethrower effect. And now in 2.9, whenever you have a float3 attribute with the 3D coordinate semantic set, when you go in the viewport and hit the W key to pop the translate gizmo, and you have this attribute selected, it will actually update the values in the selected attributes, allowing you to very quickly preview the changing the attribute. So this attribute will appear in Engine, and here you don't have to go back and forth in Engine to test the way the attribute behaves in your effect. So yeah, pretty useful. It only works for translations right now. No rotations, no scaling. It's just a translation gizmo. So I guess we're really done. I will quickly check the live chat if you guys have anything to add. I don't know.
No.
So if any of you have questions. Oh, hi Andres. Never reducing particle count. Wait till you see the LOD tutorials I have to do since many months now, but yeah, I'll do them eventually. Okay. Well, I guess there aren't really any questions. We'll do better for the live stream next time. Less mess ups at the beginning. We had the dead camera last time. Now we had the dead microphones. Next time it will be perfect. The current state of GPU spatial layers.
So
Yep.
I think maybe you know more about that than me.
As you wish. The spatial layers. So these were, since Popcorn v1, the way we had to do spatial queries between particles. So have particles query the properties of other particles. And it was always CPU. So the GPU simulations could not do those spatial queries. And in 2.9 we have the first experimental implementation of GPU spatial queries for the GPU sim. So it's still experimental. I stress the experimental part. We'll still have a few things to debug, but hopefully 2.9 is the LTS, so we should iron out most of those bugs, and we'll keep improving that for the next versions. Good point, Hugo.
Abdel was asking, I think it's about the Gizmo float3 attribute.
So it's actually any float3.
Yeah.
But I believe you could already do that before 2.9, so if you had a simple float3 node.
But it recompiles the graph anytime, so it's not very user-friendly with complex effect. It's not smooth at all to use. But
since 2.9, we now have a nicely working the synchronous compilation. So even if it recompiles the graph, it's not that bad.
Yeah. So yes, you could do that.
Yeah. Right. I was talking about the LOD tutorials I'll do in the upcoming weeks, hopefully. I'm saying that since 6 months now. If any of you have any suggestions of tutorials you'd like to see, don't hesitate to come in our Discord and just post anything you'd like to see as a tutorial, and we'll happily make that. So I think we can have multiple of those gizmos.
Oh yeah.
You cannot have them displayed at the same time.
Yeah, you can't have them displayed at the same time.
One displayed gizmo.
Right.
Yeah, and that's actually something we need to improve.
Definitely.
Because sometimes when you have nothing selected, the gizmo that shows up controls the current instance of the effect. So if I spawn multiple of those effects, it controls the last instance. So it allows you to preview how the effect behaves when you move it around. But when you select something that supports the gizmo, there is no visual change. I have this selected, so you might think that you're moving the actual effect instance, but no, not at all. You're actually moving what's selected, and it happens for nodes. And I know that I personally keep stumbling across this. So yeah, we need a visual clue somewhere.
Yeah. One thing you can
Yeah.
do, however, I mean, it's not the same thing, but I think if you select several nodes or several attributes, it will average those,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
can offset all those at once.
Yeah. So it's not.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I understood multiple gizmos as multiple physical gizmos
Yeah.
displayed on
No,
screen, but
Yeah, but you probably meant what you understood.
yeah, okay.
I mean,
So no multiple gizmos displayed on screen, but yeah, if you can select multiple things and have them move, update at the same time by moving a single gizmo on screen.
Yeah, actually.
Like a rigging, like a rigging setup for your effect. Indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. That's
That's
actually
awesome.
that's actually something we are thinking about already in version 1, using the backdrops to allow you to create effect rigs. I really like the kind of rigs you see in characters that people post, like rigging their characters in Maya with all those arrows that you can move and you see the face animate or stuff like that. And yeah, we were thinking doing something like that using backdrops, stuff that wouldn't be brought, or could maybe be brought in the game engine as a helper, but wouldn't be compiled in the final in-game version, and something better than just gizmos where you could morph, use it to drive attributes to morph effects or stuff like that. Yeah, exactly, like a rig.
We missed a question about velocity from the widget.
Velocity from the widget?
Yeah, the question, like 3 message before the last one.
Can you get velocity from that widget? I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah,
I
if you
think
plug a
that's-
dx dt on that node in the
right.
graph, it should
Oh
work.
yeah, it should work.
Yeah, it should
yes.
work.
So yes, getting the velocity.
Oh, yeah.
I can actually show you how to do that. I'm not sure how I will
I'm not sure this
make it
effect
visually,
will, yeah.
but there are a few problems that make it non-practical. But so here, when I drop that node, do we have a? So it might not be in this pack. I think I made a template, but it might not be in the public template. Anyway, I think I made a template velocity from position, but there is actually a built-in node that you can use, which isn't really straightforward if you don't know what you're looking for, but it's the dxdt node. So this is the time derivative of whatever you plug inside. So if you plug a position, it will give you the velocity, the rate of change of that position per time unit, so per second, which is the velocity of that position. So the problem with that, with something controlled with the mouse, is that because the movement isn't smoothed depending on the frame rate or across frames, what you'll typically see with unclamped frame rate is that when you move with the mouse, you'll have one frame where you have a big move, and then the next 3 or 4 frames when you have no move, and then the next frame which has a big move. And so this will give you super wild velocities. But when you use something in engine to drive that, let's say you use the position of a character or something animated through a curve or whatever, these will be smooth from frame to frame. So even though when you test it using a gizmo in the editor, it will give gibberish velocities, when you plug it in engine, it will work nicely. Yeah. Well, to prototype projectiles, you can actually use the. We have an animation track backdrop. Oh, that's another thing I forgot to mention.
That's right.
So I was supposed to talk about this thing here. So this is just a simple. So yeah, in the backdrops, it's just a simple circle. You have a few presets. So these are just animation paths exported to FBX. Nothing special there. And yeah, so these are presets, but you can browse for a custom FBX also. And so the new thing in 2.9 is that we added, it's pretty trivial actually, we added a way to change the position, orientation and scale of that backdrop. So it was pretty crappy before. You had to, if you wanted to upscale it, If you want, where is it gone? Yeah. So if you wanted to upscale it, you had to go back into Maya or whatever, scale your path, re-export an FBX, and yeah. So a very small quality of life improvement, but yeah, definitely for projectiles, this is something you could use. Just export the path of your projectile as an FBX and plug it in here, and you'll have your effect. Follow it.
Of course, this is editor only.
Oh yeah,
just to preview
sure. This
the-
is editor only. Yeah, all the backdrops are editor only. You don't get them in engine when you import it into Unity or Unreal. Or
And then
whatever
you can
else.
drive your projectile with an actual script. And
Yeah, that's also something we talked about. But, yeah, this will come later, maybe. We have all that.
I mean, in engine.
Oh yeah, yeah, engine,
That's
yeah,
in
right.
PopcornFX.
Yeah, we have to revamp this entire panel. It's been not really high prior right now because all this is static. You have a single anim track, a single mesh backdrop, single light backdrop, etc. It's just a very easy way to get things going and yeah, give you the ability to set up a quick scene to prototype your effect in. But ultimately, we want to make an actual scene graph where you can like parent mesh backdrop to your animation track and have multiple effect instances and stuff like that. Yeah, this will come later.
So there is a question about the speed up of the projectile. You can actually, there is an
Yes.
animation speed modifier that
Yeah.
you can change here. So
Yeah, reset the scale maybe just so we can see it better.
yeah, sure. So yeah, you can change the velocity here.
Yeah, when you preview skin meshes as well, we have a way to say that you can speed up the animation. Yeah. And by the way, regarding skin meshes, we recently did a whole bunch of improvements on the mesh importer. Right now in 2.9, so this is in 2.10, I'm kind of getting ahead of
The
of
next
it.
live stream.
Yeah, then for the next live stream. So in 2.9 right now when you let's see this one. So this one actually has a skeleton and an animation, and you can preview neither of these in the mesh viewer. So in 2.10, in the current master branch of 2.10, the skeleton is displayed, the animations are played back, you have a timeline for the animations. Yeah, it's way easier to troubleshoot things when something goes wrong and you don't see what you're expecting in your effect. And we also revamped the way we imported the FBX animations. We got a times 50 speed increase in 2.9 actually. So yeah, if any of you were using some longer animation tracks, yeah, it was pretty painful to import before, so now it should be way smoother. Yeah. Okay. So if there are no more questions, I think we'll wrap it up. We're all on our Discord server connected. So if you have any questions afterwards, drop by and we'll do our best to answer. And also if you have any, as I was saying, any tutorial suggestions or things you'd like to see in the next versions, don't hesitate to tell us. Okay, well, thanks guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
And see you at the next live stream,
Yeah.
I guess. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.